sometimes out for a roll.
I forgot.
New figures suggest that last year equals 2016 as the warmest on record. The European Union's Copernicus Climate Service says the global temperature in 2020 was 1.25 Celsius above the long-term average. Freya Van Borg is a senior scientist with Copernicus. She says greenhouse gas concentrations increased despite coronavirus shutdowns.
During the COVID, there was a reduction in emissions, at least in some emissions, total CO2 emissions, for instance, but not just a reduction in emissions. We're still adding to the atmosphere because the emissions become this concentration in the end. Even if we cut the emissions a bit, that's going to reduce the limit. It gets added to the atmosphere.
You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC in London. Japan has rejected a South Korean court ruling that requires Tokyo to pay compensation to women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese army in the Second World War. The Japanese government said the decision was utterly unacceptable. Tokyo paid $10 million to South Korea 6 years ago as part of an agreement to end the issue, which has damaged relations between the two countries. But the court said the deal did not prevent the women themselves seeking compensation. Officials in western Afghanistan say 4 members of the security forces were killed by the Taliban in an overnight assault on a district police headquarters and government buildings. The attack in Arab province lasted for several hours. The local district acting police chief was among the dead. As Britain's first working week outside the European Union rules comes to a close, its Transport Secretary says only 1% of trucks have turned up at ports without the correct paperwork. Minister Grant Shapps told the BBC that a bigger problem was drivers not having negative COVID test results as required by the French authorities. Some companies have reported queues building up at distribution depots as administrators grapple with new regulations. But Mr. Shapps insisted most travel is operating smart.
At the moment, all it is in fact growing, and it's growing very smoothly. When I speak to French, I speak to my opposite number, Jean-Baptiste, and they are telling me that they are very, very keen to keep that flowing very smoothly, because not least because actually they sell more stuff to us than we sell to them.
Sweden's parliament is debating a bill that would allow the government to close or limit access to shops, gyms, cinemas, museums and campsites. All have so far remained open in Sweden throughout the pandemic, with the country relying on a strong tradition of civic responsibility to ensure social distancing and hygiene rules are followed. The bill is expected
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？
我当家？
你当家？我当家？
我当家？
到底谁当家？你来当家。Welcome to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station on a very cold Friday afternoon, but we're going to be talking about art, which hopefully will warm everyone up with our very special guest, Jason Yan. I'm going to try and get the Mandarin correct.严仲唐.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Welcome to the show, Jason. And before we talk about your career, writing about art, designing art, because you're also an artist yourself, we're going to talk about an upcoming event in Taipei called One Art Taipei that you're also involved in. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Where in Taiwan did you grow up?
I grew up in Kaohsiung when I was very little.
Well, usually people are very little when they grow up, Jason. Yes. That's the nature of growing up. Come on.
Yes. Well, I have memories from when I was 3 years old.
Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, one of your English language biographies says you grew up in a very erudite household that was imbued with abundant culture. Now, for our listeners who might speak English as a second language, what does that mean? I don't even know what it means in English, but what does it even mean in Mandarin that it was an erudite household imbued with culture?
Well, my mom, she's a musician, and my father, he was one of the founders of Guidepost magazine in Taiwan. So growing up, it was very natural to be in contact with art, literature, music, performance, all the cultural events. Growing up, I didn't have access to television.
Because you were busy doing more erudite and cultural things.
Well, it was kind of a strategic move for my education, agreed by my parents. They would choose carefully. They would curate a selection of programs that I would watch on videotape and even Laserdisc.
So, the big
yes, the big ones.
The ones that look like 33 albums, the old record albums, long before your time, Jason.
Like Discovery, National Geography, concerts, classical music concerts.
Did your parents push you into a career in the arts world?
No, they wanted me to be either a lawyer or doctor.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a lawyer, since yours truly, the program host, happens to be a lawyer, so there's nothing wrong with that. If they wanted you to, or wanted to encourage you to look at something like law or medicine, why was there also still a heavy emphasis on the arts while you were growing up, as opposed to just making you study the usual stuff, science or history, those kinds of topics?
Well, my father, he used to be a certified instructor for Dr. Edward de Bono's courses, emphasized on thinking methods, creative thinking, problem solutions, time management, things like that. So they find it extremely important to cultivate creativity from a very early stage.
Which is pretty rare in Taiwan, since so many parents really focus on making sure their children study math, science, and those usual subjects.
Well, I was the other way around. When I was little, my parents never really cared about my grades. And that was kind of, looking back, I think it's a reverse psychology.
Did it work?
It worked, yes. I said, I got a D for my math exam, or a B. And every time the response was, good.
Oh, it sounds very generous, yeah.
Yes, but it was reverse psychology. So I did my best. But then I felt I wanted to be an artist, so I looked at various types of art forms, and one of the things I wanted to become was an architect. Being an architect is like the Holy Trinity. You can build buildings, you could design furniture, interiors, and you can still paint. So I think it's one of the best occupations.
Did you pursue that for a while?
No, I thought about it, and I didn't want to be responsible for people's lives. Looking at the news, when you see roofs collapsing, or I don't know, people falling off from stairs.
You didn't want the burden of designing, so you decided to paint and write and things like that.
It's more difficult to kill a person with art.
Well, some people might debate that, given the role art has played in history. When you were a teenager, your high school years, what kind of artistic activities did you do?
Well, all kinds. Going to galleries, museums, painting at home or outside, talk about art. But I remember when I was maybe 6, I started drawing on the computer. It was a lot of afternoons spent at my parents' office just playing on the computer, but not playing games.
No video games. You were designing and drawing.
Yes, I was very much influenced by my mother. She's very artistic, so she actually designed a stained glass window at the office. And she was influenced, later on I discovered, by looking at art books, she was influenced by Kandinsky. So I kind of continued that just recently because I was organizing the home and I found these precious little computer drawings I made when I was 6.
So you still have them?
They were laminated by my father.
Wow! So they really did put a big emphasis on the cultural and artistic things. When it came time for you to pursue university degree, you went overseas. You studied overseas, and you studied art in London. Why couldn't you do that in Taiwan? Why did you decide to go overseas?
Well, it's nice to be independent and free, so to speak. And I had a lot of traveling experience, so I was encouraged to pick a location to my liking. Mm-hmm. And when I was little, I had this little dream. It seemed unrealistic, but my parents helped me realize them. The idea was to spend a year in a different country or city, like every year. So I did that. I spent about a year in Shanghai, another one in Beijing, half a year in New York, and then I moved on to London. Basically, we had a family trip I think it was about 15 years ago. We went to 6 countries in Europe, and London kind of left a deep impression. So I decided to go there. But what I really wanted to go was Paris, because my aunt, she studied there, and I learned a little bit of French, but my French is not that good. Mm-hmm. Still isn't. So I decided to take the easier way out.
You went to an English-speaking location. What was it like being a young Taiwanese man studying art in London?
I would say it's not easy to generalize this response. It was like a very personal experience for me. And to me, the first year I was there, it was very domestic. I spent most of my time home and at school. And it wasn't until the second year I started to explore the city, which I really regret. There are so many exhibitions in London. And by the time you've seen all of them, they're new ones. So in a way, if you want to see everything, you can never leave. And then it was the last year I was there, I started to explore Europe. And it wasn't that difficult for me because I feel at home. It was a very easy environment for me to fit in. And there are a lot of students from Taiwan as well, compared to Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then you eventually went to Switzerland for studying towards a master's degree in Zurich. What do you remember most fondly about living in Zurich?
Well, Zurich, I always make fun of Switzerland when people ask me, what's it like living there? And I would say, 好山好水好无聊.
Is it that bad? Is that the right word to use?
No, it's actually very nice.
I mean, you did say it's a little boring, though.
It is a little boring. So I kind of do what the Swiss do. A lot of my friends, they travel extensively over the weekends, and you take advantage of that because Zurich is in the heart of Europe. You could easily take a train, hop on the plane, or drive to another city. Then you can have a different environment completely. Say, for example, Italy. It's a wonderful country. And for example, the first time I went to Milan, I was there for about 2 weeks, and I went to more than 20 museums in 14 days. So imagine that. You couldn't do that in Taipei, for example. And that's also one of the reasons why I decided to study abroad, to have that experience before I settle down for a full-time job.
Is that also one of the reasons why you came back, though? I mean, you could have stayed in Europe. You could have found a job in the arts industry in Europe, but you decided to come back to Taipei to write about art and be involved in the art industry. advising various aspects, more like a consultant than an artist. What prompted you to come back rather than stay in Europe and develop a career there?
Well, to me, it doesn't really matter where I am. It is always moving, like, except for last year.
Yeah, except 2020 with COVID-19.
My job requires me to travel extensively, which is not a very environmentally friendly thing to do, I have to confess. But it is a reality. But it is something that everyone in the art world has been rethinking about, how much carbon footprint we create and how much we should work and make a better future. In terms of traveling, I really am grateful for last year. I had a long time, I still have time to, sit back, relax, and actually think about what really matters. So from this year on, I don't think I'm going to keep following that hectic art world schedule. It used to be Art Basel Hong Kong in March, May in London or New York in June, and then Basel again in Switzerland. Summer, wherever you want, and then you start the calendar again from September, and then you go to London for Frieze Art Fair and all the auctions, and then Paris, FIAC, and then New York auctions, and then Miami in December.
You mentioned your travel for various exhibitions and auctions, and you do a lot of this travel because you write for different publications. Tell us about this career path. Why is it important for you to write for different publications instead of, for example, spending all your time making your own art?
Well, I am one of those who couldn't, relax. I am restless. I love doing many things. So when you are writing about art, it is inevitable to curate shows. And when you start to curate exhibitions and write about art, you would naturally have a lot of requests for advice, and then you become a consultant. So that's why I decided to pursue my studies in the art market. In terms of writing, I think it is integral because for myself, I always remember what I write about. And I would always find a way to apply it into my other fields of professional activities. So for example, there was a time I bumped into a collector at the Art Basel fair in Switzerland. And she asked me, do you have anything that you would recommend, for me to look at or to collect? And I said, well, you should go to that gallery and take a look at that artist. So we went back, she said, I was just there, I'm considering. I said, no, you shouldn't hesitate. We have to go back now. The fair was really large, so it took us about 3 minutes to get back. And then the gallery started to apologize, everything is sold, so she was not a bit disappointed, so we were rocking around. And it is one of those moments when you earned a client's trust. We were walking around the fair, it's a test. She looked at this sculpture and asked me, okay, can you tell me about this work? And on the very spot, I was able to tell her the name of the artist, where he's from, how many assistants he have, where he's based, why did he make this series, what's the concept, the material. And that was because I wrote about that artist. Mm-hmm. So writing is my way of learning. And so sometimes I even write without publishing things. And there was a chance last year. I published about 10,000 words in Chinese for a magazine in Taiwan. I wrote it by memory in one afternoon because I didn't have the file with me in Switzerland. I wrote a book for myself. It's literally my personal notes 101 tips on surviving the art world. I could still remember the first chapter.
Surviving the art world for writers, for collectors, for curators?
Well, I'm thinking about developing it into a book, but the first chapter was sort of for art collectors. C is for currency. And to this date, I still see a lot of rookie mistakes being made in the art trade because people are not specific enough. When you talk about the price of a work, you don't talk about the currency. And that is a very dangerous mistake if you make one. Yeah.
Well, when you discuss with publications in Taiwan, for example, what to write about, what's the demand? What do readers want? Readers in Taiwan, what do they want to know about the global art scene? You know, what do you ask to write about, or what do you recommend that the publication should consider publishing when you engage with them about potential content?
Well, I'm a bit fussy when it comes to quality, because I was trained when I was in school to write different forms of texts. I'm not going to bore you with details or the types of writings, but I think it is important to have a media that focused on quality instead of the usual press release text. You know, the facts or truths or stories art galleries want the public to believe. Because I learned that from experience. There was a gallery at an art fair who told me misinformation in the past, and I printed it. Later on, because of my art consultant position, I was able to find out discrepancies between the actual facts. So when I write for newspaper, I always fact check. Always. But I mean, it's something that people should improve on. But when you're writing about an opinion piece, say, what's the value of paintings nowadays? Now that is something I love talking about. I could talk about it for days because people say painting is dead. And I said, no, I'm actually working on another book on this subject, how painting is very much alive in contemporary settings, because there was a conflict between abstract art and representational art with technology. So people will argue, what's the point of painting if you could take a photo? Things like that. Yeah.
For the reading public, people who visit museums in Taiwan, collectors, do they want to read about sculpture right now? Or like you said, you want people to keep in mind that paintings are still important? Are there other forms of art that they want to read about? What's popular, or what are you trying to encourage people to read about?
Well, we're facing a global issue. It's not just in Taiwan. We find people are less and less likely to read. They would prefer to watch a short clip. And anything that's longer than 3 minutes, it's a bit of a challenge.
Like this show. It's longer than 3 minutes.
Yes. But I still have faith in people. So I'm actually planning to start a website of art media to cater to something that's not available right now. I'm not going to analyze all the other art media, but it's something that I wanted to do in a long time, and it's been 3 years since the beginning stages, so I'll keep you posted.
Okay, yeah, please do. Let's talk a little bit about your own artwork. What kind of art do you create?
Well, I have this daring idea when I was little, and it's totally irresponsible, but I always find excuses to make up for it. Since looking back in art history, if you want to dig way back from the cave paintings, to the antiquities, to classical paintings, to modernism and contemporary art, I want to continue, but at the same time, I want to create something new. So it's like it's very torn. I love lines. So I look at artists like Bryce Marden, I look at artists like Jackson Pollock, but also I do my own thing. So I have many ideas. I think I would pursue a combination of different approaches and mediums. But at the moment, I'm known for paintings, and they are very minimal. They're very simple. And I find it a bit difficult because I still have to find a way to justify them.
When you say justify to who?
People who criticize the works. I mean, yes, there are people who collect my works. They're mainly abroad. They are collectors in the US, in Europe. And I had this encounter in Taipei not too long ago, last year. So I find it interesting because we are all entitled to our opinions. And I think being an artist is all about finding unique perspectives. And I wouldn't call myself an artist just yet.
Oh, you're being very modest. But what you talked about, your art is in collections in different parts of the world. Some of the interactions you've had with critics in different parts of the world. Is there differences between Taiwan and other parts of the world on these issues? For example, will a collector in Taiwan look at one of your paintings differently than a collector in Europe?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's like one of these market theories I would like to propose. From a very early stage, I like to observe art markets, different areas, different regions. So if you look at, say, I don't know, a great master like Picasso, I used to tell this to my friends, and they would make fun of me because they're like, well, we're not going to buy a Picasso. But but if you ever plan to buy a Picasso, you buy it in London. And if you ever want to sell one, you would sell it in New York. Because regardless of the quality of the work, you always get a higher price in New York for sellers. And for buyers, you want a better deal, you go to London. I mean, these are astronomical prices we're talking about, but it's a phenomenon that's easy to observe. So hence, of course, there are regional taste differences. And from what I've been observing in Taiwan and Asia, collectors tend to enjoy brighter colors, but there are a few exceptions. So, like, for example, the Wingsing Art Place collector, Jenny, that I've interviewed in the past, she is one of the most intellectual collectors I've ever met. She likes conceptual works, and that is rare in Asia in general. And nowadays, people are starting to look at new mediums. But the market is still strong in terms of paintings and sculptures. But I would really encourage people to look at photography, films, installations, conceptual works, because in the end of the day, I think these are all the same. I'm not saying they're all the same. It's that when you look at these works and you think about the origin of the concepts, the inspirations of the artists, it's all about thinking. And everything has to start from a simple idea. For example, minimalism. Minimalism can be done in many different ways. It's not just painting or sculpture. It could be a photograph.
Well, we'll talk about some of those mediums that are popular after we come back from a very short break. You're listening to Residence Messenger with our very special guest, Jason Yen, artist, art curator, art writer. We'll be back after these messages.
如有长照服务需求、长照特别扣除额问题，请拨打1966长照专线，5分钟内通话免付费。一通电话让长期照顾管理专员协助申请长期照顾服务及解答长期照顾特别扣除额相关问题。以上内容由台北市政府卫生局提供。
不开车，黄色嘟嘟安全多，应酬喝酒不过量，安全回家最上道。爸爸要平安回家哦。
喝酒不开车，开车不喝酒哦。让我们一起尊重生命，拥抱亲情。
亲爱的民众，提醒您定期清除排油烟机内部油垢。烹煮食物时，切忌分心做其他事情，并注意人离火熄。且厨房附近应设置灭火器，操作时保持适当距离。当厨房火灾时，严禁以水灭火。油锅起火也千万不要移动油锅，以免翻覆造成火势扩大延烧。以上内容由台北市政府消防局提供。
亲爱的朋友，您还在吸烟吗？快拿着健保卡到戒烟门诊，或拨打戒烟专线0800636363。提醒您，最近兴起的电子烟、加热烟，因为没有浓浓的烟臭味，就被认为无害。其实已经证实，新兴烟品都有二手烟及三手烟的危害，甚至还有爆炸的风险。我是义工蔡依林，所有烟品都 get out。我拒烟，我骄傲。
我是疾管署防疫师陈婉清。防疫期间，如果您是正在居家隔离或检疫的民众，请留在家中或隔离检疫场所，不可随意外出。若您在隔离检疫期间出现发烧、嗅味觉异常、腹泻、呼吸道症状或身体不适，请佩戴口罩，联系卫生局或1922，并依指示就医，不可自行搭乘大众运输。如果您有洗牙、健检等非紧急医疗需求，请先暂缓延后。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
我是指挥中心疫情监测组组长周志浩。校园请落实防疫措施，请家长注意，孩子发烧或身体不舒服时，赶快就医，并且在家休息。也请大家共同配合，保持教室通风，使用空调时对角要各开一扇窗。餐点分配请由固定人员执行。打赛前请量测体温，清洁双手，佩戴口罩。搭乘学生交通车或大众运输时，也请记得佩戴口罩。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
家己电台家己主持咧。大家好，我是郭文铁，我伫台北广播电台。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。你当家？我当家。
我当家。
到底谁当家？你来当家。
Welcome back to Residence Messenger with our guest Jason Yan, artist, art critic, art writer, art curator. Jason, you spent a lot of time overseas, you spent a lot of time traveling. We've talked about some of the different interests of collectors in Taiwan, but what's changed among the art scene in Taiwan in recent years, whether it's from what the museums exhibit, what galleries bring to Taiwan, because the galleries play a role in I mean, they have to bring pieces and they decide what artists to feature. And then collectors are here, but they travel as well. What's changed in the art scene in recent years in Taipei, if anything?
Well, one of the most obvious signs is we're looking at a new generation of collectors who are younger and they are more rebellious. They want to create their own taste that is different from what we used to know. And I think that's a very good thing. So we have younger people looking at art, buying art, thinking about art in a different way. And it is a clash of generations. Many people are still very nostalgic to the past, but I think a good, healthy mixture of both would be the most ideal situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There seems to be more galleries in Taipei, or I would say in recent years, every year there's a larger number opening compared to years past, and they're featuring some of this more rebellious art, as you called it.
Well, there are galleries opening and there are also galleries closing. And I think people should look at art from their heart, because one of the reasons people buy art in Asia, especially the older generations in Taiwan, they tend to look at it as a form of investment. It is a good thing if you know the market. And it is a very dangerous thing if you don't do your homework and due diligence before actually spending the money. And I always tell people, when you're buying classical art, modern art, that's not contemporary. When you cannot verify the authenticity with the artists or galleries, you should always ask the 3 important questions. Where has it been shown? AKA exhibition record. You should always ask for the provenance, who are the previous owners of this work, and also the literature, the publication records. And once you get that sheet, you should always verify each and single one of them. But people are not always this meticulous, and that's where an art consultant's job comes in. And I have to verify things for clients before they want to buy and sell. Yeah.
What about digital art? Tell us what that is and why it's becoming popular or might become more popular in the future.
Well, digital art is inevitable. Well, we have to look at VR, for example. A lot of artists and galleries and museums are employing this technology, but it is important to notice that we're not doing this for the sake of embracing technology. We're doing it to further advance the artist's imagination. So there are, just like any other medium, digital art, they come in different levels. Whether it is the intellectual dimensions of the work itself, or the complexity, or how to say this, the level of technology involved. So you could make something that is out of this world. And if you look at important exhibitions like the Venice Biennale or the Taipei Biennale, you look at world-class works. But if you go to a different setting, I'm not saying that it is better or worse than the global exhibitions. It's just a very subjective point of view. Art has always been subjective, in my opinion. And people like this, people like that, but imagine a world where classical artists would have access to today's technologies. You want something that's captivating and something that truly speaks to you. So everyone I've talked to, all these experts or professionals, they always say, find a niche, like find your own direction, like whether you are an artist, a collector, or just an art lover. At first, you would go to everything. You would go see as much as possible, expose yourself in the arts. So that's what I did when I was younger. But now I'm more aware of what I like. So art is everywhere and it's nowhere. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like Schrodinger's cat. It should be everywhere, and it is nowhere.
Is digital art accessible to people who, excuse me, don't have a large budget and maybe don't have a lot of space to display something as well? Sometimes, we go to a museum or a gallery, we see something it's digital. I mean, it's flashy, it's taking up a lot of space. There might be projectors involved, things like that. Is digital art going to be accessible to a broader public?
Well, they are in public museums, but if you talk about the acquisition and maintenance of digital art in private collections, it can be a challenge. I remember looking at this film, a 3D film by a European artist, Cyprien Gaillard, in a German museum owned by a German private collection. I think it was the Julia Stoschek collection. It was beautiful. It was one of the most amazing experiences I have ever seen. But then I met someone from the collection. I talked to them about it. And then you realize the difficulties of having all these technical support. I had no idea how to install a 3-dimensional video installation. The technicalities are endless. But then if you're looking at an older example of digital art, so to speak, we would look at Nam June Park, one of the most iconic Korean artists who makes these fantastic shapes out of televisions and films. If you really think about it, before you want to buy anything, think about how you can replace all these components once they are broken or
they're just going to wear out over time.
Yes,
sure.
and that is a very romantic and poetic thing to think about and talk about, because it shows the fragility of civilization and technology. I mean, whatever looks new now will be dated in 20 years.
Given Taiwan's well-deserved reputation for technology, especially hardware, is digital art something that Taiwan-based artists might really carve out a niche in going forward?
Yeah, yes, definitely. And not just digital art, but also kinetic art. I remember this group of artists called Luxury Logical, and they are fascinating. The work they are making combines not just art, but also design, mechanics, engineering, all the aspects you can think of. And their inspiration comes from various backgrounds. They have literature, they have science fiction novels, they talk about art almost like religion. Yes.
Why is Taiwan, or Taipei specifically, popular as a place for Southeast Asian artists to sort of establish themselves or do a residency here in Taipei with a festival or with a museum? Why is Taipei a popular location for artists to come from other countries and to live and create here in Taipei?
Well, in terms of the art scene, so to speak, Taipei has always been a hub for exchange and international communication since as early as the 80s. Artists come here for a lot of reasons, and I think one of the best things I always brag about to foreign friends is that, say exhibitions, we almost never see censorship. I'm hedging here. I don't want to say it like we never had anything censored, but Taipei Biennial, for example, is the only biennial that hasn't been censored in Asia in any form because of any sensitive works or themes of a artist's work, and that is very important in the world, and that's also why it's gained so much attention over the years.
One Art Taipei is coming up.
Yes.
What date is it open to the public?
It is open on the 16th and 17th.
And this is a hotel art fair.
Yes.
Explain what that is.
Well, it's at the Sherwood Hotel. There are 2 stories of hotel rooms where you can enter, and each room is occupied by a gallery, and they will show works of art for visitors to enjoy and to acquire if they like. And One Art Taipei is a very special art fair because it used to be Young Art Taipei. So now One Art Taipei is not just about younger artists. I'll talk about another fair later that's focused on younger artists under 40. But One Art Taipei defies the perception of hotel art fairs, because usually when people think about hotel art fairs, it's a place where you could buy affordable art and up and coming young artists. I'm not saying that's bad.
I'm going to just interrupt you here, Jason, because I was explaining this concept to a friend of mine in Taipei. I say, oh, you might want to check out this One Art Taipei. It's in a hotel. And the reaction was, in a hotel? Why would I want to wander around hotel rooms? I don't know what goes on in those hotel rooms when guests are staying there. Why would I want to look at or acquire art that's inside a hotel room? Why is this a popular way to display art, whether just for viewing or for potentially acquiring?
Well, I'm not familiar with the history of hotel art fairs, but I have to tell you, the art world professionals are very creative. I've been to a fair in a parking lot where each space is an artist, like a booth or stand or whatever. But hotel art fairs, when we talk about hotel art fairs, I think first we have to talk about art fairs itself. There is a term in the art world called fatigue. It's a combination of art fair and fatigue. So, do we actually need more art fairs? But that's another issue we could discuss later. But art fairs is a place where everything is aggregated. So you don't have to visit all these galleries by yourself. And they're not necessarily from the same city or country. And it's very convenient for people who don't have the time. So in a very short period of time, in a few days, galleries from all over the place will show their works for sale. It's a trade show to the public and whoever's in the industry. It's a best playground for professionals like curators to learn and discuss new artists, and for collectors to buy what they love.
How does the One Art Taipei differ from some of these other events? You mentioned other types of exhibitions or fairs. Taipei has fairs, exhibitions, art festivals. How does One Art Taipei differ, or how do these different kinds of events differ from each other?
Well, the founders are all gallery owners themselves. So they have a rather good sense of quality. And One Art Taipei this year is quite special because of the pandemic. So the focus will be on mostly local galleries. And there are many good artists to discover there. There is an award called the One Art Award, and it will be displayed on the 16th floor of the Sherwood Hotel, where people could see new artists, and it's becoming a standard, so to speak, for people to pay close attention to.
So you would encourage the public to attend. It's not just for the trade professionals.
Yes, definitely. It is always nice to be close to art. And I think for hotel art fairs, the experience is unique because you have a closer relationship with the artworks themselves. And for some of those cases, to the artists as well, because the artists will be present. And you could talk to them, you can ask them questions. You can learn about their techniques or inspiration and concepts and ideas. It is a lot of fun.
And you'll be there as well.
Yes, I'll be giving...
And they do have a wonderful website with a lot of information and some videos of the past One Art Taipei. Jason, we're almost out of time. How can people find out more information about you and the things you write about? Where could people find some of your publications?
At the moment, my personal website is still under construction.
So what are some of the publications where you are going to be writing for in the near future, upcoming?
Well, I'm writing for the Revenue Auction Quarterly magazine and the perhaps the Economics Daily newspaper.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with us about the Taipei art scene in 2021?
Well, there are two more events I would like to share. One is Ling Li. She is a Taiwanese painter based in Paris, and she has specifically come back to Taipei for her solo show. It's the fourth one at Caves Art Center. Her works are very, very unique. After traveling to so many places, I still find her works refreshing and relevant to today's world. It's just fascinating. I could not stop looking at her works, and the exhibition title Spring Fantasies will be on view until the 17th of January. And next month, there is another hotel art fair in Taipei called Art Future, featuring artists from under 40 years old at the Grand Hyatt Hotel. And that is another event to look forward to.
Well, Jason, this has been so informative to learn not just about you and the work you do, but the art scene in Taipei as well. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to our Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Have a great weekend.